Well, good morning, TGIT. Thank God it's Thursday. Some people call it Baby Friday. Some people call it Friday Eve. Some people say it's almost the weekend. Hello, Carla. Hey, Hillbilly Tech, where you been? Walking Dead made it in. Good morning, Flip Flops, True Crime Beat. Looks like we got to get some memberships in here. I'll get to working on that, because I put up a very, very important video, members only, over on the community tab. Good morning, Canadius. Shonda, what's up, girlfriend? You know, I tried to call you back the other day, Shonda, and it went straight to voicemail. Boo. Boo whore. Hey, so glad everyone's here. So what do you think about all this that's being stirred up about Scott Peterson? Is anyone on the fence about whether he killed Lacey and their unborn son or not? Anyone? Anyone? I thought they spelled it out perfectly at trial. And the Netflix series, now I have not seen the Peacock, actually made it more clear to me. Melanie said, no, he is the devil. Here is the question, what was his reasoning? Because before there was Chris Watts or Drew Peterson, what was Scott's reasoning? And I do not think it was Amber Fry. Do you think it was he wanted to be footloose and fancy free? Because he would have dumped her like a bad habit. He would have been done with her. He didn't want children. Lacey told her mother he doesn't want children. And then when she said, I'm pregnant, her mother said, but he doesn't want children. She's like, well, he changed his mind. Screaming inside said he didn't want to be stuck with the kid. Well, that's really strange. That's what I think it is. I think it was finding out he had a son, because he didn't have a problem with Amber having a daughter. He liked being the golden boy. He liked being the one that everybody looked to in the family. He's the baby. He plays golf. He's doing all this stuff. He's the great, great, great guy. He doesn't want anyone competing with him. Sharon Rocha herself said when she first was talking to her daughter, Lacey, about Scott, she was like, man, at 22 years old, I don't see how he could accomplish all the things he's talking about. She said, but if she's happy, she's happy. And she said he was congenial. He was good to her, the whole 9 yards. So she thought, all right, let him have his day. Well, let's take a second and tell everyone happy Thursday. Glad we are here amongst friends. And this is one of my favorite shows next to our members' lives. Okay, because I love the members' lives. Throwback Thursday. Tell your neighbor hi. And by the way, I think Nufflin is just being sarcastic. We all know Nufflin. Well, hello, Karma Libra. Woohoo! Look at two Boston moms. It's almost Friday with school back in. She said, I need a weekend. Yeah, how's it going for all of you? All the kiddies going back to school. Not my kitty, not the fake Bombay. He doesn't go to school. All right, let's look at it. Los Angeles Times. Scott is singing, and I'm telling you what, he's got theories. Now, the burglar theory damn sure didn't hold any water, okay? That bucket had a lot of holes in it. The burglary in Modesto, in their neighborhood, was on the 26th. Lacey disappeared on the 24th. Well, she was murdered on the 24th. That's not allegedly. That is not allegedly. People ask, why did he pick the 24th? Why Christmas Eve? Because he had been studying the tides. He wanted to make sure there was a tide that was going to take her and Connor way out in the ocean. He didn't care if they popped up in New Zealand. He didn't care if they wound up in the Philippines. He was studying the tides. One thing about Scott is he agreed to take a polygraph. Everyone knows I don't care about polygraphs. They can't be used against anyone. It's a tool for law enforcement. Then he said, no, I'm not going to take one. I'm not going to take one. But the people, as if they're great people, okay? As if they're great guys. The people that burgled the house on the 26th were really afraid they were going to go down for Lacey's disappearance. They insisted on taking a polygraph. Even when detectives said, you don't need to take a polygraph. We do not think you have anything to do with her disappearance. They still said, I want a polygraph, and they took it. And of course, they passed with flying colors because they were just there to get a DVD player. I think they got a Magnavox TV. I still don't know how the hell they got that out of there. Remember those Magnavox TVs, you guys? I mean, it wasn't just a TV. It was a big old cabinet. And it had the speakers on each side. That had like a net on it. It'd take like 2 big old dudes, powerlifting dudes, to get that out. And they did this down the street when there was tons of activity outside of the Peterson house. Huh, go figure. Anyway, all right, there's Scott, 51 years old now. Nearly 20 years since Scott Peterson was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife, Lacey, 2 documentary series have brought the high-profile case back in the spotlight. But only one of them, which is the Face-to-Face with Scott Peterson, which was on Peacock, touts the participation of Peterson, who hasn't given an on-camera interview since 2003. He said, I didn't kill my family. Well, then who did? To this day, he maintains his innocence. Does anyone find it odd that he told everybody he was golfing that day, but then he changed his mind and decided to go to the bay? There's just too much pointing at Scott. Lacey Peterson's remains were discovered on the shore of the San Francisco Bay in April of 2003. Don't forget, little baby Connor was discovered there too. Now, the jury decided on the death penalty. There are some states we have some issues with. California would be one because they no longer have the death penalty. Because you see, Scott got sent down to San Quentin along with many other people that were going to be put to death. Now, I'm not picking on California, but there are also some states, y'all are going to love this, that if you murder a pregnant woman, it is only considered one murder because the baby hasn't been born yet. So will there ever be justice for Connor now? He says, mind you, he's been sent to Mule Creek State Prison. He's not in San Quentin anymore. Scott Peterson, who is serving life without parole, says he regrets not testifying at his trial and that he is speaking up now for his family. Oh, well. He said, if I had a chance to get the reality out there, if I have the chance to show people what the truth is and they're willing to accept it, maybe that takes a little bit of hurt off of my family. And that would be the biggest thing that I can accomplish right now. The LA Innocence Project requested new forensic testing be done around 15 pieces of evidence they said could exonerate Scott Peterson. Now, a judge did rule that DNA testing on the duct tape could be used. I think it's going to take a little more than that. The documentary elaborates on this possible evidence as well as leads that Peterson and his supporters claim paint a different picture from that which the prosecution used to secure his conviction. The documentary also suggests that the media frenzy that emerged around the Modesto couple at the time of Laci Peterson's disappearance contributed to his being found guilty, despite what Scott Peterson and his allies argue is lack of evidence. Is it lack of evidence? Or was it meticulous planning? Because on December 9th of 2002, he told his girlfriend, who did not know he was married. I don't like when people go after Amber Fry. She could have easily ignored all of this and said, yeah, I don't know him. I don't know him. No, she did the right thing. December 9th, he told her he was dishonest about being married. He said, I've been married before, but I lost her. Okay. Same day he bought the boat. Soon after, he started studying the tides in the San Francisco Bay. The only reason he went out on the 24th is because he wanted to make sure the tides were going to carry his wife and unborn son way away. He addresses his affair with Amber. He says, I was a total asshole to be having sex outside our marriage. I really did everything I could to bring my family home, and that included keeping my cheating with Fry from people. I didn't tell people because I wanted the search to continue. I guess I understand why she tried to turn it into a relationship after the fact and made claims that it was something more, but it simply wasn't. We heard the phone calls. We heard the phone calls. Laci is missing. He is professing his love to Amber. I'm at the Eiffel Tower. I can't wait for you to be here with me. I wish you were here, Amber. Amber, I will take care of you. Amber, do you miss me? He was one needy piece of shit. So here's his theory. And let me tell you what, his sister-in-law, Janie, some people call her Janie, some people Janie. They keep saying that the police did not adequately investigate leads that could have exonerated him during their initial investigation into her disappearance. Now listen, it wasn't just Modesto police. There was many agencies involved. He says there are so many instances where there was evidence that didn't fit the detective's theories that were ignored. People want the answer they believed in to be the answer. He said Peterson alleges that because the police had decided he was their prime suspect, they did not follow up on certain tips and dismissed the possibility that Laci Peterson was abducted in connection with the burglary that occurred in their neighborhood. Listen, that burglary was 2 days after she disappeared. Now, what the hell? She disappeared on the 24th. And let's not forget, dogs don't lie. Dogs aren't there for a popularity contest, okay? He said that she took the dog on a walk. Question is, how would he know considering he wasn't home? Maybe just taking a guess because Mackenzie was running around with a leash on, but the neighbor put Mackenzie in the backyard. So this is his assumption that she took the puppy dog on a walk. No one saw that. Nobody saw that. When the canines came out, her scent stopped at the beginning of the driveway, which makes sense because she's pregnant, and normally if she's going to go somewhere, she's just going to get into her car, her Range Rover, which he sold. It says the series also raises questions about the timeline of Lacey's disappearance based on potential sightings by witnesses. All of those witnesses had been interviewed, investigated, everything. They said, listen, that's called mistaken identity because we know it can't be her. We know it can't be her. He said that he changed his mind the morning of the 24th and decided to go fishing. Why did he get the fishing license days before then? Why was he studying the tides? Why did he make his own anchors? He didn't buy an anchor. He made his own. Ridiculous. When Peterson is asked about his memories of life, of what life was like for him 20 years ago before his wife's disappearance, he replies, every moment is so real and still there. I drove away expecting to come back that afternoon and have a wonderful Christmas together after we both had fun mornings. But no, he said they were gone. I said goodbye to Lacey, and then my family was gone. Does anyone believe in this? I believe it was all premeditated. All premeditated. The question is why? Because he's not the only one. He's not the only one. Let's take a look at some other women that were not safe at home. Now, I know if you're watching this on the replay, I'm going to see some comments from people going, well, it's for men too. Sometimes men aren't safe at home. Today, we're talking about women that are not safe at home. Look at your screen. Very sad. And that is a small amount of women that have been killed in their own homes. Mermaid said the watch Lacey was wearing was found at a pawn shop. Yep. Don't forget also, he was living the good life. He was walking around in his underwear, eating pizza. He had porn channels on. He subscribed to porno channels. When he went to stay with his sister in Southern California, she had a woman that was working for her. He was hitting on her. He even told her he was single. How can you be single if you're looking for your wife? And she lived over the San Francisco Bay. And he would say to his sister, who turned on him and told the truth, he said, no way they're going to find her out there. All right, let's get to the hearing the other day. We have a lot of things to go through. He is a dog. He is a dog in heat to Boston moms.
Another long shot in the 20-year-old case of convicted murderer Scott Peterson, facing a judge today in his latest attempt to get a new trial.
This case cries out for further investigation, further forensic investigation, including DNA testing of physical items that may lead to exculpatory evidence and or leads to possible suspects.
The now 51-year-old zooming in from Mule Creek State Prison, his head shaved, listening in as his legal team argued that 14 pieces of evidence from his case should be submitted for DNA testing.
We look at the original investigation. We look to see if anything was missed or overlooked or hidden.
The prosecutors arguing that the conviction should stand.
He has to show the evidence. He has to come forward with actual evidence, with actual facts, not speculation.
The investigators from the Peterson case would tell you, sure, let them retest it. Fine with us. The problem is it sets a potentially dangerous standard.
I think it sets a potentially dangerous standard too, because he's gone through his appeals. He's gone through his appeals. Now listen, if there is new evidence, it's a long shot. What pisses me off, he has taken no accountability. And I mean none for his actions. Look at that guy's O face. Holy shit. He has taken no accountability. He says he was an asshole for cheating. Yeah, you were. You were. He tries to make Amber out to be this obsessed lover. Obsessed. Now, I don't know enough about DNA testing to know that after all these years, if they're going to be able to even test it. I don't know. That's above my pay grade. But I am digging the O-face here. Could you imagine? Ooh, boy.
Where any defendant, despite all their appeals being rejected, can make an argument that, well, maybe there's something additional.
Okay. This is important, what he is saying here. We have a justice system for a reason. We do have, in the justice system, not on this channel, innocent until proven guilty. He was proven guilty. The appellate courts have rejected based on the evidence. Not based on YouTube, not based on the media, based on the evidence. So why are they honestly going to retest these things? By the way, at the expense of the taxpayers of California, and possibly give him a new trial. Why? I'm not digging it.
That should be tested.
Today, Peterson getting a small win. The judge ruling against new testing for 13 of the 14 items the defense requested, but allowing one piece of evidence to be tested. Peterson was convicted of the gruesome murder of his pregnant wife, Lacey, and unborn son, Connor, nearly 2 decades ago, in a case that riveted the nation.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty.
He's always denied his guilt, and earlier this year secured a powerful new advocate, the Los Angeles Innocence Project. They are.
Where's Kim Kardashian? Is she not taken up for this fool?
Argue that Peterson is actually innocent and that authorities zeroed in on the wrong man from the start.
The LA Innocence Project is arguing that this testing could show that he's actually innocent, that someone else did it, and that Scott Peterson was falsely accused. It's an enormous uphill battle.
The LA Innocence Project claims a burglary across the street from the Peterson home happened on the same day Lacey went missing.
But that has been cleared up. The burglary was on the 26th. That has been cleared up. I thought the whole time too was on the 24th. And they kept saying, now how in the world can they get that Magnavox TV out And the other stuff, with all the media present down the street, well, they're pretty crafty. But those two dudes took polygraph tests, and there is not a trace of them anywhere around that house. Not a fingerprint, not a pubic hair, not a nose hair, nothing. These people have lost their minds. Give Lacey and Connor their justice, please. Look how beautiful she is.
And was not fully investigated, and this burnt-out van could hold a crucial clue.
Their allegation here is that some witnesses believed that Lacey Peterson interrupted that burglary, and then she was killed because of it by those who were involved in it.
In January, they submitted a 1,500-page motion detailing.
Now, who's to say, okay, let's just say that the burglary was on the 24th, even though they've cleared it up and said it was on the 26th. Let's just say in 2002, 8 months pregnant, she had a lot of stuff going on that day. She was making gingerbread cookies, putting stuff together to go see family that day. Let's just say she came across a burglary down the street and they killed her. Don't you think there would have been some trace of Lacey there? The robbers were cleared. They insisted on a polygraph. Not that I care about polygraphs, but not a lot of criminals insist on getting one. So let's just say she interrupted the Magnavox burglary. Okay, let's just say there would be some trace of Lacey in that house. Fingerprint, shoe print, blood. They still don't know how she was killed. They assume she was suffocated because after being in the ocean, all they found of her was a torso. How disgusting is that, Scott Peterson? How disgusting is it? 1,500 pages of bullshit.
Detailing explosive claims, witness statements, an alleged confession from an eliminated suspect, and evidence that was not tested for DNA.
It's very concerning that they are so vehemently opposing DNA testing in this case.
Peterson's lawyers asking for evidence to be tested include bloody mattress samples from that burnt-out van found blocks from the Peterson home, a black tarp, and several items found in a plastic Target bag near the bodies of Lacey and their unborn son Connor, a hammer and work glove found across the street, and a piece of duct tape found on Lacey's pants with human DNA present. The state of California arguing in part that Peterson is on another baseless fishing expedition. The LA
Good for them. Good for them. He's on another baseless fishing expedition.
Innocence Project's claim that a piece of fabric found in a burnt-out van a mile away from the Peterson home might be connected to Lacey's murder.
That orange van had actually been seen where one of the witnesses saw Lacey. So there was a connection between the van and a possible Lacey sighting.
So somebody's blood.
There's burnout vehicles all over Foyle, Oklahoma. That doesn't mean they're connected with anyone's murder.
Blood is on a mattress in the back of the van that was burned deliberately. Who?
Former Modesto Fire Inspector Brian Spitulski responded to that burnt-out van on Christmas morning.
There was a stain back there that presented as a rust-colored stain.
Spitulski says that he and the Modesto Police Department tested the mattress, and it came up positive for human blood.
I don't know that I was tying the moment to Lacey. I was more tying the moment that it was human blood. It made it like this was much more important than just a burned vehicle that somebody was just wanting to get rid of or cover up.
But today, the judge ruled that the fabric from the van will not undergo additional testing. Advances in DNA testing have been successful in overturning verdicts in the past.
As technology has improved and techniques and experience has improved, we're able to see more and more DNA. We're able to see DNA profiles that we couldn't detect before.
Professor Ashley Hall is the director of the Forensic Science Graduate Program at UC Davis.
As we moved on into the mid-2000s, kits were developed that could quantify male DNA by the Y chromosome. Later on into the 2010s, kits were developed that could quantify male and female DNA in the same reaction.
She says although the evidence was collected and tested in 2003, it was retested in 2019. And at that time, improved DNA technology showed no female DNA was detected.
The kits that were...
Okay, before we get through all the DNA stuff, which is not going to take too long, Courtney, you are so right. Why did he take off to Mexico if he's innocent? When they found Lacey and Connor's bodies, they said, we're not letting him get away. Many people have questions. Why didn't they go ahead and arrest him? Well, shit. Well, shit, you know? Easy. The DA said he will not prosecute this case until it's a complete case. And a complete case is what district attorneys call, you got to have a body. So you got to be able to prove to 12 people. And we know there's some very, very stupid people out there. You have to prove to them that someone died. Someone was murdered. So when the DA said, I will not prosecute this unless it's a complete case. We see it in other cases. People were raising hell yesterday about Sebastian. Well, they can do it without a body, not without an eyewitness. They say it in Summers' case. They can do it with a body, not without a witness. You got to have a witness. People say it about Michael Vaughn. Well, they can do it without a body. Well, not until someone says this is what happens and they agree to take the stand.
Used in 2019 are the same kits that are used today. So I would expect the result that we get in 2019 to be the same result we would get today, which would be no female DNA present, no Lacey present.
The problem that the Innocence Project has is that they don't have any evidence of actual innocence. They have theories, they have hopes, they have tests they want to do. But that's very different from actually coming to court and presenting evidence that fundamentally changes the perception of the case as a whole.
This is the third time that Peterson has been in court this year. In March, the Innocence Project made their first arguments on their new motion, claiming that there were witnesses who say they saw Lacey on the day she went missing, who were not properly interviewed.
There are a number of other witnesses who we have been investigating.
Lacey Peterson was 27 and 8.5 months pregnant when she went missing on Christmas Eve in 2002.
Can I help you?
Yes, my daughter's visiting us this morning. She's 8 months pregnant. She took her dog for a walk in the park. The dog came home with just a leaf shot.
The day his wife went missing, Scott told friends he was going golfing, but later told authorities it was too cold. So he went fishing instead, heading out to San Francisco Bay, over 80 miles away from home.
Lacey Denise Peterson is 8 months pregnant. She's considered a high-risk missing person under suspicious circumstances.
When a mistress surfaced a few weeks later, investigators zeroed in on Peterson as their lead suspect.
Scott told me he was not married. We did have a romantic relationship.
In April of 2003, the bodies of Lacey and their son Connor were found washed ashore, not...
Could you imagine being Lacey's mama? Those two were like peanut butter and jelly. They were best friends. Just me, I've always wondered about this as well. My friend Susan, his brother or parents, the money and ID came from someone. I have always wondered why They didn't prosecute anyone that was helping him escape. It's not like old Scott went to the ATM and cleared it out. He had his brother's passport. Why were they not prosecuted? Why? I don't like these. I don't like these weak ass district attorneys. Courtney's got lots of great comments today. She said, yeah, he definitely had help from his family. He had a ton of cash. Ton of cash and his brother's passport. They should have caught a charge too.
Far from where Peterson said he'd been fishing on Christmas Eve.
There is no question in our minds that the unidentified female is Laci Peterson. The unidentified fetus is the biological child of Laci and Scott Peterson.
Laci Peterson's husband now in custody.
Scott Peterson has been arrested.
At the time of his arrest, Peterson had dyed his naturally dark hair blonde and had thousands of dollars in cash, several phones, camping equipment, and changes of clothes. Details that...
Who helped him? Who helped him? Who got him all that cash? Who got him all the different phones? Because it wasn't his dumbass. He was being tracked all over the place. They had a tracker on his truck. They knew where he was. His family.
Convinced those obsessed with the case that he had something to hide. Mark Garagos defended him at trial.
He had dyed his hair because he was still trying to work as a salesperson, but media was haunting him, and he thought that that would be one way to not draw attention to himself. And the cash was because he didn't want people tracking where he was spending his money.
Peterson was charged with 2 counts of murder, and his 5-month-long trial became a media circus.
We're breaking into programming to bring you the verdict in the Scott Peterson murder trial. A jury has just convicted him of murder.
It took the jury 9 days to find Peterson guilty of first-degree murder for Laci and second-degree murder for Connor.
We, the jury, in the above entitled cause, find the defendant, Scott Lee Peterson, guilty of the crime of murder of Laci Denise Peterson.
In the decades that Scott Peterson has been in prison, Laci's disappearance and death have continued to fascinate the country, inspiring dozens of documentaries, books, podcasts, like Crime Weekly.
He does have a good shot at proving that he didn't really get a fair trial.
And TV movies like The Perfect Husband.
No, they're questioning me like I'm a suspect. But that's what they do.
Through it all, Peterson and his legal team continued to do all they could to secure a new trial.
It is very, very rare that someone whose case has worked its way through the appeals would get to reopen the case 20 years later to make arguments that they wish they'd made at trial.
But despite all the possible evidence the LA Innocence Project put forth, the only piece that will be tested is a 15.5-inch strip of duct tape found on Laci Peterson's body.
This is kind of the end of the road for Scott Peterson.
Oh, it damn sure is the end of the road. It goes up and up and up and up. All right, so you were found guilty and sentenced to death by a jury of your peers. Not even in your county. They changed venue. It should have been first-degree murder for both, GB. I agree. I've never understood how it was second-degree murder for Connor and first for Laci. No idea. But then the death penalty is overturned. Then the second degree is dropped because Connor hadn't been born. See, I don't like this ideology. I don't like these thoughts that people have that a baby in the womb is not a baby. I'll never understand it. I've got people that come after me about Alexi Treviso, and they're like, she put her baby in the trash can. She suffocated it. And they're like, well, you know, she should. I'm like, no. Stop. Stop now. Stop now. But his parents have always been part of the problem.
Murdered, it's a nightmare. But when your child is accused of murder, that is also a nightmare. And that's the situation for the parents of Scott Peterson. He's on trial now in California for the murder of his wife, Lacey, and their unborn son. The Petersons have rarely done interviews and have not talked publicly at all since the trial began a month ago. But recently they did speak to Barbara. The judge has imposed a gag order on speaking about details of the case, but the Petersons can certainly talk about the son they say is innocent.
In this Redwood City courthouse, the trial of Scott Peterson for the savage murder of his wife Lacey and their unborn son Connor is expected to last as long as 6 months. For the families of the victims and the accused, the case has taken a heavy toll. Scott's father, Lee, who owns a small packaging business, and mother, Jackie.
And the thing is, his parents funded their lifestyle. And I'm not putting this on Lacey at all. They bought this house in Modesto, which, by the way, was cuter than a bug's ear. And the landscaping gets going. They have an in-ground pool. You know, I mean, all kinds of stuff is going on. He has no help from his parents now because they're dead. Someone had a question, when did they do away with the death penalty in California? I'll have to look that up, but it's not there anymore.
Are convinced of their son's innocence. Hundreds of miles away from their San Diego home, they and others in the Peterson family have pledged to remain at Scott's side, whatever the emotional and financial cost. As the case unfolds, the Petersons must reconcile two versions of their son. One as a wrongly accused husband who grieves for his murdered wife and unborn son, and the other an adulterer turned cold-blooded monster. Why don't you sit back here? We met with the Petersons a few miles from where the trial is taking place. They seemed exhausted and emotionally spent. Mrs. Peterson suffers from chronic bronchitis and is hoping for a lung transplant. Her condition, as you will hear, requires her to remain on oxygen. You have been at your son's trial every single day, yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
It's consumed us totally, so that there's no joy in any of our lives since Lacey went missing.
There's no joy in our lives since Lacey went missing. Okie doke. Then why did you not sit him down and say, what happened? He's never had any accountability in his entire life. He has always been coddled. Always. He was the golden child because the Petersons had children from other marriages. Their child together is Scott. And there was a lot of resentment from the other children because they were like, well, that kid can do no wrong. I mean, none.
To a world transfixed by the Peterson case, the sordid facts have become all too familiar. The Petersons had been married for 5 years. On Christmas Eve of 2002, 27-year-old Lacey Peterson, 8 months pregnant, mysteriously disappeared. Within weeks, suspicion turned to her husband Scott when a massage therapist named Amber Fry revealed that she was having an affair with him, a fact he did not initially tell police. Once the affair was exposed, Lacey's family, the Rochas, who had been supportive of him, began to distance themselves from their son-in-law. 4 months later, the decomposed bodies of Lacey and the baby they planned to name Connor were found washed ashore in San Francisco Bay, downstream from where Scott says he was fishing the day Lacey vanished. A few days later, Scott was arrested and charged with 2 counts of murder. Describe your son for me. Describe Scott Peterson.
Gosh, where should I start? He loved to hug and kiss, and very affectionate. Just a really kind, sweet little guy.
Was Scott ever violent? Did he have a temper?
He had no temper, Barbara.
He's got my temperament. I don't get angry. I get hurt or sad.
Was he ever in trouble? No.
Never in trouble.
Never in trouble of any kind.
He was too good to believe, almost.
The hell is wrong with them? He's on trial for murdering your grandson and your daughter-in-law. Where is the reaction to the evidence? And there was piles of it. They brought the boat in to the courtroom. They brought the boat in. They showed the jurors what he had been researching for weeks. They played the phone calls between him and Amber. December 9th, 2002. He said to Amber, I was dishonest. I was married, but I lost her. Same day he bought that boat. Then he started researching the tides. Well, guess what? God had a bigger plan. He turned those tides for you real quick because Lacey and Connor were found.
I swear, we never had to swat the kid or anything, ever.
How did Scott feel about the fact that he was going to be a father?
Very excited.
Happy.
He built a nursery?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Called us at 7 a.m. in the morning when she took the test. And I said, how do you know? And she said, I took the test. They tried for 3 years to have a child.
They did?
Yes.
When was the last time you physically saw Lacey? How many days before she was missing?
4 days.
And everything seemed fine?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. We were all putting our hand on the baby's stomach. Scott was trying to find it for us so we could feel it kick. And they were just ecstatic.
When you first heard?
It. Not the baby. Not their son. We could feel it kick. Do you know why? Of course, this is my opinion only. Why Scott's parents are separating themselves from their grandson. For one, Scott was already jealous of his own son because he knew that his son, which would be their grandson, would get more attention than him. Because if they use his name or say our grandson or even the baby, that would be a human connection they can't do. I know we got some grandmas in here. When you feel the kick, do you say it or, oh, I feel a baby? That's a baby.
That Lacey was missing. What did you think? How did you hear, first of all?
The phone rang. I answered it, and Scott was sobbing on the phone, and all I could hear was Lacey and Miss, and I thought she'd miscarried. And my heart just sunk. And then I said, settle down, take some deep breaths.
Jackie Peterson, you idiot. You are a woman. You have been pregnant. You know that at 8 months along, she's not going to have a miscarriage. No woman who gets a phone call and hears that their daughter-in-law or their daughter can't be found is going to assume a miscarriage. No, not at 8 months along.
Everything's going to be okay. Take a few breaths and then tell me slowly. And he told me she was missing.
You know, there have been reports that he showed no emotion.
How are you doing personally? How are you holding up to all this? This is a lot.
Tremendous strain, obviously. So,
People have said he was emotionless.
No, it's not true. Most people know that. He showed emotion, but he didn't cry 24 hours a day. He cried privately. He worked at trying to find her. He tried to keep us up, because we were breaking down too, so he'd try to be brave for us.
What did you think when you learned that your son was the prime suspect?
Couldn't believe it. We thought they were joking.
Just disbelief. I mean, my God, here's a missing woman, and within days, you're focusing on my son, and you should be out looking for his wife and baby.
Okay. You're focusing on my son. You should be focusing on his wife and baby. There's no acceptance for your grandson. There's no acceptance for your daughter-in-law. You're focusing on my son. That is the only ownership the Petersons would take. Now, I'm going to say right now, I couldn't imagine being in their shoes. I couldn't imagine. If a child of mine, well, it wouldn't happen to me. But I'm telling you, I couldn't imagine if they were accused of something like this. But at some point, I would have to understand and accept where the cow ate the cabbage and realize that even if you raise them, doesn't mean they're going to remember the way they were raised right. They're focusing on my son and not his wife and baby. Who got him the Viagra? Who got him the passport? Who got him the phones? Who got him the cash? Who was going to set him up in Mexico? Who? His parents were.
Mr. Peterson, how do you know your son had absolutely nothing to do with this?
It's just not in him. It is just not in him. I've never seen him mad. The only time I've seen him mad is if he misses a golf shot. He might get a little mad. That's
at himself.
That's it, at himself, yeah.
What kind of a marriage do you think that Scott and Lacey had?
They had a very good marriage. They backed each other up all the way. It was like it was them, and we were all outsiders. They were totally dedicated to each other.
Did you have any idea that your son was seeing another woman?
No.
Amber, did you know that Scott was a married man?
So when you heard that he was seeing another woman, what did you think?
It was surprising. It was disappointing. But it's certainly not anything that's extraordinary.
Well, if you thought the marriage was so good, were you not shocked?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, we were shocked.
We were shocked. We were
disappointed.
Unhappy. I mean, that's the reality of life. Men have affairs. Women have affairs.
When their wives are 8.5 months pregnant?
Probably more so.
That's mostly when men do, we've learned. I had no idea.
So is it your feeling, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that Lacey was pregnant and Scott needed another woman for, I don't know, sex or what? What do you think?
I think it's that simple, Barbara. I really.
I think it's that simple, Barbara. He just needed a woman for sex, and that's his wife sitting right next to him, taking puffs of her oxygen. So what are you doing? What are you doing there, old man? Who are you using for sex? You know, pregnant women can have sex. It's actually very healthy. I think it's that simple, Barbara. I think it's that simple. Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? I don't know if you guys ever watch like Me TV or like, you know, the old shows that come on. DT Driver and I were watching The Jeffersons the other day, and it was the episode where George Jefferson thought that his son was having an affair. Turned out he wasn't at all. It's a really funny show. But him and his wife and the in-laws were coming unglued. Coming unglued. Unacceptable, unacceptable, unacceptable. I'm going to kill him. I'm going to kill Lionel. Listen to him. I think it's just that simple. He was just using her for sex, but I've never had a problem with him. Only thing he does is get mad when he misses a golf shot. That's it.
Really do.
There's no
That
excuse
happens.
for it. It
It
just happened.
certainly doesn't give motive for murder.
How is Scott doing?
He's doing okay with the trial because he's actively involved in it, and he can see some light at the end of the tunnel. He works hard to keep himself up because there was a time he wanted to give up when he found that he had lost Lacey and the baby.
There are times when, you know, it's difficult to go on, obviously, because
Before the trial. Just in despair?
Yes, like his life was over and gone, and everything he was building in his life was for Lacey and the baby.
And you have to understand, he was virtually run out of town.
Scott, any comment? You got a second? Scott? It's Scott?
He had media following him,
Have you taken a polygraph test?
hounding him every day. He had shock jocks lined up in front of his house with bullhorns, you know, screaming murderer. And
His
he
friends,
couldn't live in his home because of all the media presence. He became a homeless man, and living out of a car. He really did. He literally became a nomad.
Bullshit. He lived with you. Y'all put him in a Four Seasons hotel in LA. Bullshit. Then he went to San Diego and he lived with a sister.
So in a strange way, being in this prison now in trial is almost a relief.
That sounds strange, but at least we knew where he was every night, and that he was safe, relatively safe.
Does Scott talk about Lacey?
Yes.
he has tears in his eyes, but we try to concentrate on the joy we had with her and the good memories.
Does Scott ever talk about his son?
Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very hard.
Give me some idea if you can.
Well, we try to keep him up when we go there, but things come up, and then when we mention it, then he starts weeping, and we just try to move it up, remember the good things, the nice times that we had together, and we'll always have those. No one can take those away from us.
That is messed up. That is messed up. Y'all remember when Cindy Watts gave that interview, and I don't go on Watts Island because there's too many crazies with it. And I've got a cookie jar full of crazies right now, if you haven't noticed. And Cindy Watts just kept putting the finger at Shanann. Now, I'm not saying there's any woman on this planet that's that easy to get along with, but you don't blame them for their own murder. No, exactly, Susan. victim blaming. How could you? These people are part of your family. If one of my sons called me right now and said, one of my daughter-in-laws is missing, I'd be jumping out of my skin. I'd be coming unglued. I'd be like, what the hell? When's the last time you saw her? Well, what the fuck's going on? Are you guys having problems? What the hell is going on? Call the police. Call the police. Call the police. I'll be right there. I'm on the next plane, or I'm going to drive, and I'm a horrible driver. I mean, my first reaction wouldn't be to blame my child, but I damn sure want a lot of answers.
2 decades after going to prison for the murder of his pregnant wife, Lacey, Scott Peterson is breaking his silence.
I wish I could say I was stronger, but all that stuff did take a toll on me.
In the new Peacock docuseries, Face to Face, the 51-year-old speaks out from behind prison walls, arguing police ignored critical evidence that exonerates him, and describes in disbelief the moment he was convicted.
I was totally expecting to go home that day. I was staggered by it.
Peterson was sentenced to death in 2004 for the
He said, I was staggered by it. You couldn't be staggered by it because you planned it, asshole. What you were staggered by was the amount of attention that people gave and that people cared. And the media, like Gloria Gomez and many other people that wouldn't let it go because they knew you were up to something. Mermaid, can you grab the link? She said, Brooks, I would, but I'm putting on my face for work. You can do 2 things at once. It's called speakerphone.
2002 murders of his wife, Lacey, and their unborn son, Connor, after their bodies washed up in San Francisco Bay, near where he said he'd gone fishing months earlier.
There are certainly times that I become a wreck.
At times emotional, Peterson pushing back on the portrayal of him as an uncaring and detached husband.
I was so angry at the media because their reports just weren't factual. I strive not to show any emotion in the court because I didn't want to, see them break me.
He also speaks out about his former girlfriend, Amber Fry, whose testimony was crucial to establishing a motive.
They said that you killed Lacey because you didn't want to be married and you didn't want to be a father.
That's so offensive. It's so disgusting.
It's so offensive. It's so disgusting. You don't have to have a motive to prove murder, but there's reasoning behind everything. Behind everything. What is so offensive to him? He was having an affair. Amber wasn't driving up to Modesto to see him. He was the one that was going way out of his way to see her. He told her, I don't want any children. He said, but the one you have is enough for me. That's what he said. That's what he said to her. Recorded, his voice, not mine. Offensive? He's offended? How on earth can he be offended with all the evidence against him? Listen to that again.
They said that you killed Lacey because you didn't want to be married and you didn't want to be a father.
That's so offensive. It's so disgusting.
I certainly regret cheating on Lacey.
Why did you keep talking to Amber Fry after Lacey disappeared?
I was searching for my family. Stay in contact with Amber, I thought. Yeah.
He was searching for his family, so he thought if he kept talking to Amber, she was going to find him? Are you kidding me? I think he wanted a divorce. I think he wanted the big D, but he didn't want to face, I don't mean that kind of big D. He didn't want to face his family. The golden boy didn't want to say my marriage failed. He didn't want to face Lacey's family, who looked at him like he was some sort of prince. He did not want that shame put on him. Why did you keep talking to Amber? Well, because I was looking for my family. No, no, you were making plans with her, dude. You were making plans, my dude.
And she wouldn't get into the picture of how I was searching for my family, stay in contact with Amber, I thought, and she wouldn't get into the picture of how complicated, ruin the search.
In 2020, Peterson's death sentence was reduced to life without parole. Now backed by the LA Innocence Project, he's petitioning for a new trial, arguing it was burglars robbing the home across the street who killed Laci.
I believe that Laci went over there to see what was going on. That's the mistake.
So there's renewed interest. There's the Innocence Project. So now what's next for the case?
So Peterson's new legal team hopes that new DNA testing and evidence could lead to this new trial. Key here, the court has said that they will allow this piece of duct tape that was found on Laci during the autopsy to be tested. It never has been before. And Peterson's legal team says they have witnesses that says they saw Laci walking their dog before Scott left the home that day, which would rule him out as a suspect. No surprise, all these years later, the prosecution says this is a fishing expedition.
Yeah, why are they on his side? Listen to him. Oh, no surprise, the prosecution said it's a fishing expedition. Listen, there's a lot of people with nice smiles and black hair. They did not see Laci. That has been discussed for 20 years. They have already said the burglary was on the 26th. She cannot be kidnapped 2 days after she disappeared. It doesn't happen that way. It's ridiculous. What about the dogs? What about the dogs that lost her scent in the driveway? That means she did not go for a walk that day. And the person in this case, get your tissues, it breaks my heart. I have read her book. It's called For Laci, is Sharon Rocha. One thing, well, many things she has said, but one thing that stands out in my mind is when she got the call from Scott and he said, have you seen Laci? She's like, no. Now remember, she was supposed to be making gingerbread cookies that day. They had something going on that night with family. She got very annoyed with him because he said, well, she's missing. What do you mean missing? Adults don't go missing. Adults don't go missing. What do you mean she's missing? She said, I was really annoyed by him saying that. She could be giving out cookies to neighbors. She could be picking up some stuff to cook, to bake with. I don't missing. It is such a strange word to say. Wouldn't you say, well, I don't know, because she's not home. Well, I don't know, because she's not home. How come he didn't ask any of the neighbors? Wouldn't you ask your neighbors? I mean, if I got home and DT Driver, who's normally in the recliner, wasn't, and I couldn't find him anywhere around here, I'd be like, hey, Linda, have you seen my husband around here? I'd be asking people around, have you seen my husband? I wouldn't call his mama and say, he's missing. No. That is a guilty man's statement. That is a statement that is all conclusive because he knew.
Her mother has written a book called For Laci. Sharon Rocha joins us live here in New York. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, Greta.
Ready to do this?
Yes, I am.
We've been talking about this for a number of years.
For a long time.
You've written this book, For Laci. Hard to write?
It was extremely difficult to write. When I decided to do this, I just didn't realize how difficult it would be. I thought I could do it.
You know, it's we have such a different view on the outside looking in. The book gives us that inside look.
Yes, That's what I tried to do. I wanted to let people know Lacey. We'd had many, many requests, many cards and letters from people saying that they would like to know Lacey, know more about her.
The book is very personal. I mean, you talk about your own life. You talk about life with Lacey, Scott, with Ron. I mean, it talks about the whole thing, the trial.
And let's not forget this. He got home. The dog, Mackenzie, was in the backyard. I'm sure that was a shock to him because he probably didn't want the bother of a dog either. He went in. He put his clothes in the washer, started the load, took a shower. He sat down, heated up some pizza with a glass of milk, which, by the way, is disgusting. That is disgusting. Then he got his nerve up and he called Sharon Rocha and said, "Have you seen Lacey?" "Well, no. You guys aren't supposed to be here till 6, 7 o'clock? I don't know." "Well, she's missing." "Well, bitch, she wasn't missing when you were sitting down eating your pizza or taking a shower or doing your laundry." "What are you talking about? You get home, you don't smell gingerbread? Your pregnant wife is not home?" But you do all these other things to take care of yourself and calm your nerves and then call her mama and say she's missing.
But the sort of overriding theme is the pain.
Yes.
Doesn't go away, does it?
It does not go away. No, I've been asked, how do you get through this? How I've gotten through it, basically been my family and my friends who have been absolutely wonderful. I'll never get over it, though.
How often? I mean, is it every single day, I imagine?
Yes, it is. It is. I think about her every day.
You know, you and I have talked. I mean, holidays are bad, and even you and I even talked before that I said when the trial was over, that's when it really sort of sets in. You lose your mission.
That's it exactly. This Christmas seemed to be the most difficult for many of us, in my family, her friends, and I think that's part of the reason.
Why did he do this? Why did Scott do this?
I don't know. I wish I did know. There's no reason. There is no reason. There's no logical reason as to why he did this.
Do you remember the first time you met him?
Yes, I do.
Where'd you meet him?
I met him in Morro Bay at the cafe that he worked at. Very nice, very personable, such a gentleman, very well-mannered.
Lacey crazy about him, no doubt?
Absolutely. Absolutely. She had already gone out with him a couple times before I met him. But she called and said, "Mom, I've met the man I'm going to marry."
You're sort of interesting in the book. You write about how even in the first days after she disappeared, and when you were suspicious of Scott, you felt bad because you thought, if Lacey comes home and knows that I suspected her husband.
Right. And I can't really say that it was like a major suspicion. I think a lot of it was subconscious at first. And then as time went on, as the days passed, I just became more and more aware of how unusual I thought his behavior was. I mean, he didn't react like so many of us were. The panic, the need to find her immediately. I never once heard him say, and I felt he would have said this to me. We were always very close, but say, "Mom, I don't know. Why would anybody take Lacey? Where could she be? What has happened to her?" I never heard him say anything like that. And I don't know if anybody he has said it to.
Okay, that would trouble anyone. There are certain questions we ask when we can't find something, or especially someone. We have discussed this in other cases. We discuss it quite a bit in the case of Summer Wells. We discuss it in the case of Sebastian. There's questions that people ask. With him, there was no concern. There was no concern. He was never, his behavior was totally inappropriate. Between selling the Range Rover, trying to sell the house, getting the porn channels, continuing to talk to Amber, pretending like he was at the Eiffel Tower, but the way he spoke with Lacey's mother in particular is extremely concerning. Why would someone take her? What could have happened to her? What are we going to do? He seemed almost bothered by everything. When people were out in the park yelling, Lacey! Lacey! He's just walking around. He's sitting there going, she's not here.
You met him first. Did you like him?
I did. I liked him very much.
What was it about him?
All the things I just said. He was just a very congenial, well-mannered, polite, very attentive towards Lacey, and Lacey was absolutely crazy about him. He always called me Mrs. Rocha until the day they were married. Then it was Mom. From then on.
When do you think he decided to do this? Was this a planned murder?
I do feel it was premeditated, absolutely. And all I can do is, put out my own theory. I've read that I know a lot of people have called Scott a sociopath, and I've read where sociopaths can go on for years and years as if everything is normal in their lives, and then all of a sudden they're backed into a corner, and that may cause something to snap. And I feel personally that that corner came on December 6th when Sean Sibley asked him if he was married.
When you go through the facts, when you have the when he was confronted with the marriage by that.
So he had already told a woman that he knew through work that he was not married. He was set up with Amber. Nothing makes you the best kid in the family more than having a child. Because grandparents love grandbabies. He had everything working in motion since, in my opinion, since before Thanksgiving.
That woman. And then you have, I think it was on the 9th or the 12th when the boat was bought.
The 9th.
The 9th the boat was bought.
The reason I say I think that was his corner was because the very next day is when he started searching the internet for about the tides in the Bay Area. And the following day on the 8th was he searched the internet for a boat. And the day after that on the 9th is when he bought it. And that's also the same day that he told Amber Fry that he had lost his wife and this would be his first Christmas without her.
Okay. This is beyond important. This is beyond important. He gets hooked up with Amber. I still don't think Amber is the reason. I don't think he planned on having a life forever with Amber. That would have fizzled out by the summer. That would have fizzled out. Okay? He tells Sean Sibley he's not married. He's introduced to Amber. Okay? It's going fast. It's going ridiculous. It is over the top. And don't get me wrong, he used this woman for his ego. He did. He starts researching the tides. He tells Amber, I was dishonest about being married before. I was. I lost her. This will be my first Christmas without her. Same day, he bought a boat. I think about what Aphrodite Jones said when she was in the courthouse watching the trial. She said, I was expecting this big old buck, good-looking dude to walk through the door the way he acts. She said he's a twerp. He's a total twerp. That timeline from early December is so important. And he wants to talk about duct tape and burglars that were there 2 days later. GTFO.
You know, as you listen to the facts, I mean, to jump ahead a little bit, I was at the sentencing when you said, you know, why didn't you just, you know, divorce is an option. You didn't have to murder.
Absolutely. It is an option.
So it's just really,
I don't know. I think something has gone awry here where so many men feel that murder is their only option out of a marriage. And I think they need to realize it's time to stop murdering our daughters.
Well, the other thing that's so profoundly difficult, and God knows, I mean, it's so much easier for me, is that it appears that Lacey never saw it coming. I mean, that, you know, I mean, that does not appear.
I know she didn't see it coming. I know she didn't.
That it would suddenly, it just, that's the worst, you know.
It is.
We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with much more. Sharon, of course, stand by.
Possibly describe the ache and
And this year, you know, go ahead and punch us in the face. That's probably the worst offender of all. So this is your big chance. I mean, give us some idea. What were we like? Were something were we a problem? Were we something that?
In the beginning, it was absolutely great because it just kept Lacey going, kept her face out there. Even though I knew that Scott was responsible, you know, in the back of my mind, I still had that sliver of hope that she would come home. So it was great, like I said, keeping her picture out there, her face, people looking for her. And to be honest with you, most of the time, it wasn't a problem. There were a few times that it was a problem when I'd hear things that I didn't want to hear about or hear things that were reported incorrectly.
One day, I showed up at Scott's house, Scott and Lacey's house. I never dreamed you were there. You were there.
I didn't dream that you would have been there either.
Well, no, I know. Neither one of us did. I felt badly when I saw you, and of course, at first, your friends sort of ran interference. I mean, it was a rather awkward exchange. But is that the horrible part when we just sort of show up?
Yes, it is. It is unexpected, but at that time, we were there cleaning the yards. We're taking care of the yard, pulling weeds. Everybody had mud in their hands. And we'd been approached before, and not necessarily by the media, but through the fence. I don't know if you remember how the fence was. You could see through the fence, and we would see people coming up the driveway.
In terms of some of you watched some of the shows. You even write in the book about, in fact, that you're watching the shows at night. Were the shows more painful to you?
In the beginning, I keep saying in the beginning because all of this was, it was just surreal. And it was actually, it's kind of hard to describe it, but a distraction for me. It was like, okay, there's Lacey. I'm still looking at Lacey. She's still alive. She's still out there. We need to bring her home.
We did a show one night on bait. And you write about in the book how you confronted Scott with what our experts did on the air.
Exactly. I turned to him and I said, what kind of bait did you use? And he just turned and looked at me over his shoulder and smiled. And his sister-in-law, Janie, said that he used a lure. And I said, well, was it at least shaped like a shrimp? Because you're witness.
Wow, that pisses me off to no end. How could he have the nerve to turn over his shoulder, smile at Sharon, and then Jamie answer the question? She wasn't there. She wasn't there. But it is an important question. What kind of bait did you use? You were out fishing. What did you use? I've always had questions about going fishing. Someone tells you they're going hunting. There's a few questions you have. You're not questioning them. It's just, you're having a conversation. What are you hunting for? What are you going to use? You're going fishing. Oh, really? Where? What kind of bait are you going to use? What are you fishing for? That's always been one of my biggest problems with Candace's story, not to cross cases, when she said we were going fishing. You don't go fishing without bait or tackle or a fishing pole. Jamie Peterson's a real butthole.
I mean, your expert had said that you use live bait.
Mark Arrogant is his lawyer. And I've known Mark for years, and without any doubt, he walked into the courtroom with a swagger. What's your thought on Mark?
I didn't think very much of him, to tell you the truth. He really irritated me. I think in the beginning, I mean, he was very knowledgeable. Don't get me wrong. He knew what he was doing, and he was a great defense lawyer. I mean, he did everything he could to defend Scott, but it was his tactics. Of course, I've never been in a courtroom before. I didn't realize that a defense attorney can say anything or do anything to distract the jury. But I did not like the incident of the boat, the boat that he put in the parking lot with the dummy in it, the headless and legless and handless dummy. I thought that was very tacky.
I think he could have gone without the sort of the joking.
It is tacky. Because when Lacey was found, they only found her torso. When they were asking, how are you going to identify her? Are you going to do dental records? And when law enforcement authority shook their head, no. Yeah. No. No. No.
In the
absolutely
the court in front of you with his client. I mean, I don't think defense lawyers realize, who's in the courtroom and what they see. We're gonna take another quick break. Sharon, stand by. Coming up, former vice.
Without them, there's a huge void in my life. I literally get sick to my stomach when I allow myself to think about what may have happened to them. No parent should ever have to think about the way their child was murdered.
That's Sharon, of course, in April 2003, just after the bodies of Lacey and Connor washed ashore and Scott Peterson was arrested for the murder. Sharon Rocha has joined us again live in New York. Sharon, throughout this entire book, we've woven within it as this.
Again, it's Throwback Thursday. Who remembers seeing Sharon Rocha crying, bawling her face off, saying no parent should go through this. No parent should have to wonder how their child died. I remember watching her and I just wanted to hug her. I just wanted to hug her. I just wanted to give her the biggest hug. I just wanted to crumble because she's right. Parents go first, okay? Parents go first. Or children separate our stuff and say, all right, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. Our kids are left things. We should never, ever have to lose a child. And it happens. I mean, there's all kinds of illnesses and things like that. But this is a man that they trusted and brought into their family. And the dildo, all he did was lie and cheat and support their lifestyle with his parents' money. Hell, if I was his parents, I'd have bought a boat and thrown him out in the bay. I'd have been like, enough.
Crying, this grief, the behind the scenes stuff. It's just like, it never stopped.
No, and it still hasn't stopped. I feel that Scott not only murdered Lacey and Connor, the Scott that's in prison murdered my son-in-law also.
You loved him.
I loved Scott. I loved him.
What was it like looking at him across the courtroom?
The person I was looking at wasn't my son-in-law most of the time. It was very difficult for me the day the prosecutors gave their closing arguments in the guilt phase. I really had a difficult time that day because I knew that the jury was going out shortly to make a decision as to whether Scott was going to be guilty or not. And at that time, and there are still sometimes, not nearly as many as it was at that time, but I'd have a hard time separating my son-in-law from the murderer.
Well, you know, when you think about it, every conversation you had with him after he's in custody was a public one. I mean, from the witness stand.
Yes.
You've never been able to sort of sit and have a private, and you'll never be able to.
No.
I mean, I don't know what you would say then, but I mean, the relationship was, you know, I mean, I would assume that you have a lot of sort of, you know, undelivered things you'd like to say to him privately.
You know, right now I can honestly say that there isn't anything I want to say to him, because that person is not the Scott Peterson that I knew.
What about his parents?
I haven't spoken to them since the trial.
During the trial, it seemed like there was some tension building. In fact, at one point, I think there was the problem with the.
I was so glad that Greta asked this question, because I would be ready to rip their faces off. I would. I welcomed your son into my family. We celebrated their wedding together. We were at the baby shower together. And you are listening day after day after day after day after day. Evidence that points straight at your son killing my baby girl and my grandson. How dare you?
The home, because I think Jackie and Lee said you couldn't go in the home and you wanted to reclaim some of Lacey's items. I mean, it at least it appeared from the outside that tension was growing.
Actually, what had happened there was I had been told several times that I could go into the home, and it would be next week when they would be there. And then when that day would arrive, I wouldn't get the phone call. So I finally just took it upon myself and said, okay, we're going in to get Lacey's things, because they were slowly disappearing.
Did you have a good relationship with Jackie and Lee before Lacey disappeared?
Yes, we did. We didn't know each other very well. We were acquaintances. They live in Southern California. We're in the Central Valley, so we saw them occasionally when they would come to visit Lacey and Scott. But we did have a good relationship.
You know, sitting in the courtroom, I mean, it was, you know, from the back of the courtroom, we'd see on the right hand, we'd see Lacey's family. On the left side, we see Scott's family, and you could see, you know, it wasn't just Lacey and Connor. You could see sort of the ripple effect of, you know, the destruction was so vast.
Absolutely, absolutely. It didn't stop at the families. It spread out. I mean, there were friends, there were total strangers on both sides of the families.
Jackie, I've spoken to Jackie in the last 6 months. I can't remember when. She still believes her son's innocent.
And that's her prerogative to believe that he's innocent. But we don't have to believe that.
Amber, hero?
I think Amber did a great job of recording the conversations between her and Scott. My own personal opinion, I think the star witness was Craig Grogan. I think I saw a difference in the jury when Craig testified.
He was the one that sort of looped it all together, put all the pieces together at the end. He was the closer.
He was the closer. And I could see the expressions on their faces were like, okay, now I get it. Now I know what we've been listening to all these months.
Were you curious what the jury was thinking throughout the trial? I mean, because you can't talk to them.
I was curious, of course. I was just hoping that they were understanding what was going on, because I certainly wasn't in the beginning.
So what do you watch? You watch Scott, you watch Garrigus, you watch the prosecutor, you watch the jury in the courtroom, or the judge?
I watched them all. I watched all of them. I took notes on everything.
We're going to take a quick break. Stand by. Has written a new book called For Lacey. We're back with Sharon Rocha. Sharon, how are Amy and Brent doing? That's the Lacey siblings.
They're doing fine. They are both back at work, and they're doing fine.
And Ron, who is, for all intents and purposes, Lacey's stepfather, raised her.
Yes. He's known her since she was.
Mermaid said his sister-in-law is obsessed with Scott. Why would that be? Has anyone wondered? Now, mind you, statute of limitations is totally over for anything anyone did to try to help Scott get to Mexico. Has anyone wondered why Janie has been so obsessed with this case? I don't think for a minute it has to do with Scott's innocence. But there was a certain passport that Scott had with him when he bleached his hair blonde and had a stack of cash in a bunch of phones, burner phones, and was planning to go from San Diego into Mexico. Only one person killed Lacey Peterson, and according to the jury in California, that was Scott. But people tried to help him get out of this. That $1 million defense was paid for by his family. All of that cash that he had was from his family. That passport, might want to ask Janie about it.
He was 2 years old.
He's out in the green room, on
Yes,
the
he
weight
is.
room. He's fine too. But it still takes its toll on them. I mean, they're fine, but there's a toll.
It absolutely takes its toll. None of us will ever be the same. Lacey's always there with us. We talk about her all of the time. But there is something missing from all of us.
When we were paging through the book down, we're passing around the newsroom. I mean, the comment that was made is the smile.
Mm-hmm.
It's all anyone, people, I mean, people don't know her. I mean, we talk about that giant smile.
And you can see from the pictures in the book, that was Lacey.
That was a big smile.
Always had that smile on her face. She laughed, she giggled, she was happy.
Prosecution team, high marks?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
They worked, how closely did they work with you?
I'm sure, they kept me at a distance as far as a lot of the information because they just weren't allowed to give me information. But as far as working with us, they were the best. They were just the best. I mean, we talked to them on a daily basis, whether they wanted me to or not.
They've had some career changes, some of them.
Yes. Rick Testasso is now a judge.
That was the lead prosecutor.
He was the lead prosecutor.
We were hard on him.
Yes.
And so we apologize.
Yes.
He won the case. We were hard on him. That's what we lawyers, we're used to it, though.
Birgit Flatiger is running for district attorney.
Unopposed, or does she have an opponent?
She does have an opponent. We've been busy trying to raise funds and get her elected here. And Dave is still with the DA's office also, Dave Harris. So, and they've just been wonderful people. They really are.
What do you think of the judge?
I may have disagreed a couple times with him, but I think he was a great judge. He was very fair. He was very cautious. He made sure everything was done by the book. He obviously doesn't want any appeals, nor do any of us.
You had a little bit of someone's nose got a joint about seating though one day. What happened? He was going to put you in the back of the courtroom, all the parents?
Yeah, with a little incident out in the hallway with the Petersons, which was actually a buildup of previous things that had happened.
Which is such a sad thing. Like the parents, like the two sets of parents who did nothing wrong, and you see them sort of having to file separately out of the courtroom, and we're all sort of cautiously keeping everybody separate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Because there were comments that were made, as we would pass through the doors or walk down the hall. Quite often Lee would make a comment to us and tell it, it just came to the point, enough is enough. They obviously blamed us for Scott being there.
The detectives get very high marks too. I mean, you say in the book you write very very warm things.
Yes. Craig Rogan, Al Brocchini, John Bueller, all of them did a wonderful job. They were the three, Craig was the lead detective, and the other two, they were the three that we worked the most with.
I don't think people realize that sometimes the detectives, they get very personally involved in it.
Everyone involved in this case, well, I say everyone, but at least many of the people that I've talked to, those detectives and many others with the police department and the DA's office, all the prosecutors, they actually had to go through, I call it a decompression themselves when this was over. I mean, they were.
And I totally can see that, because we see people doing their jobs and we just think, oh, well, you know, it's a 9 to 5, they go home, it's not a big deal. But imagine having to be ingrained in a case like this. I think about the case of Gannon Stout quite a bit. Imagine being a detective, being the sheriff, being the DA, and people are asking you all the time, what's going on? What's going on? What's going on? And you have to live and breathe the truth. Not what people think, not what people speculate, not their theories. And then you have to present the truth to 12 people and get them to understand something that is way out of the realm of our brain, because a normal person doesn't understand pure evil. They just don't. I mean, look at this. Here's some of the evidence. That's one of the anchors that he made. Anyone find that to be just a tad bit sickening? He started making these anchors in December. That's the warehouse where he was making anchors. There's one of them, People's Exhibit number 72. That's one of the anchors. He thought he had her weighted down just perfect. He did. And then, instead of making fun, like the defense tried to do, of the way her body was found and the way she was transported in that boat, they made a memorial out of it. Again, she's not the only woman who has not been safe at home. Look at this. Well, you guys, I absolutely love our Throwback Thursdays, because I believe there are a lot of cases that we still need to talk about, even if they are solved. What do y'all think? You want to keep doing Throwback Thursdays? Put a 1 in chat if you like Throwback Thursday. Put a 2 saying, no, I'd rather talk about something else. Just Me said 1. DT Driver just said great show. Angie Baby said 1. And if you guys have any ideas on what you want to talk about for Throwback Thursday, hit me up. You know how to get a hold of me. I'm not hard to find. I am not hard to find. You guys are the absolute best. I appreciate you being here, and for just being the coolest chat and coolest community on YouTube. And amazing friends. You all are the real deal. I will see you tomorrow. We have a very special guest and a very special case tomorrow. No, it's not Summer. No, it's not Sebastian. But it is a case that is close to me. It's just a couple towns over. And I think with our advocism, is that a word? We can really help this family. I will see you back here tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central Sharp. You guys are the best. Me, love you long time.